Welcome to the Apex Insider Push to Cash show. I got Nathan here. We are doing a recap show of the Long Beach GP. I know it's been like 3 days since the GP. We had a full packed weekend, especially if you were a golfer or just interested in the Masters. There was a lot happening, but yeah, we still caught the race, at least whatever I could catch of it, and then. I know that I didn't have many bets for the weekend, but yeah, man, welcome back. How are you doing?
Thanks. Yeah, doing well. It's Pacers playoff season here. I just cashed a lot of futures on them again.
I like
Uh,
it. I like
so that's
it.
going to fund my playoff tickets this year. So hopefully they make another deep run. And then I'm also rocking the winner's hat here for having a good weekend at Long Beach. So feeling good right now.
Yeah. So going to the Pacers? I think there's 66 to 1 to win it all. 60. I think that's what it was like when I last saw.
Yeah, people don't respect the Pacers, but I mean, they started 10-15 this year, and then since then they've won like 75% of their games and have had like a top 3 or 4 record the rest of the season, and no one talks about it. So I mean, that's just kind of how it rolls here in Indiana, but excited for it.
Seems silly at 66 to 1. So not saying back the Brinks truck or anything, but maybe it
No,
is worth a
no.
little nibble. So
Yeah, I mean they're not the favorites, but they're a really good squad.
yeah. Well, I know we're not here to talk about basketball. I've given up basketball, as you know. I don't care for it anymore. I don't have a team. I'm a sad Dallas Mavericks fan. So, anyways, uh,
Finally.
it's so bad. Long Beach, yeah, obviously, it's one of those tracks that that's a bucket list of mine. I think out of a lot of the tracks, especially
For
street
sure.
circuit, I want to one day go see it. So awesome that they were back. It seemed to give some quality of racing. But yeah, Kirkwood was our winner. Pelot got second. So we had Andretti, which was kind of talked about. We've been talking about it in the Discord, like how they're going to be good and at this track specifically. And, can't discount Chip Ganassi. They're always going to be favorite. And we talked a little bit about Penske and how they've been kind of having their struggles at time, which it did come back. And we will kind of discuss that in a little bit. But yeah, just what were your thoughts on the race overall? Just everything about it.
Yeah, I enjoyed this race. When I was driving home today from work, I was kind of thinking about how it actually was really similar to how the F1 race went this weekend. I think Piastri was obviously a little more comfortable in his lead, but Kirkwood kind of controlled that lead the whole time. But there was stuff going on behind them that kind of left you um, wondering, how it was going to play out, especially just like the F1 race in IndyCar, the tire choices and when they chose to use them. Um, and how that played out. And even though Kirkwood led the whole time, there was kind of this like up in the air, like is Lundgaard going to catch him? Is Pelot going to get him on one of the stops?
Mm-hmm.
And the first like 15 laps of the race was awesome. There was a lot of passing, and overall in the race, it did kind of slow down later on when people got into their save and everything. But there was a lot more passes in this race than there was in St. Pete. I don't have the number, but it was at least double what St. Pete had, and the the overcut was really effective in that race, which I thought the broadcast did a good job explaining why of how when you come out of the pits there's a couple tight and slower corners that allows the person coming out in front who just is trying to pull off the overcut um, to warm up their tires a bit in those harder passing zones or really non-existent passing zones, and that's what allowed Kirkwood to kind of stay in front. Every stop he was going one lap, maybe 2 laps later than Pelot, and he almost got bit by that on his last stop. He did hit some traffic, and he had a little bit of a slow stop, but he still had enough of a gap that he came out in front of Pelot and held off.
Yeah, the clean air is king, as we say, right? And that's a big
Yeah.
reason why in F1, especially, and with IndyCar, yeah, if you're up top and you can, in a track like this, a street circuit, with, I mean, it's not hard to pass. It's more of like, how can you take care of your tires while still effectively passing, other cars. So Kirkwood really benefited from having that clean air most of the time, which allowed him to do those overcuts too as well. So like he could still keep.
Yeah, and another comparison I had in mind that I didn't mention there was a late pass for a podium position. Like, Lando finally got Leclerc there towards the end of the race, and in the IndyCar race, Lundgaard got Rosenquist, who had been in front of him 90% of the race, which we'll talk about, and it's still kind of a pain for me. But that was cool to see, a pass late for the podium. Those are meaningful points. Especially as Lundgaard continues to impress here, those points will be big for him.
Yeah, so that is one thing I wanted to talk about, which is, something I, always do with F1 is like, what have we learned? And, new seasons, right? You want to take things from last season. I think it's a little bit different this year for an IndyCar, because last year we had half the season without hybrids, and then hybrids took over. So we did have sort of a sample of what to expect. Obviously, driver changes, teams changes and whatnot have probably impact, however that may be. But we've seen so far in this season, like just macro wise, Penske is struggling. They are struggling. We talked about they just need to nail qualifying. Maybe they'll get the strategy, but it seems like they're struggling on both ends. Maybe let's talk there first and see like what is happening with Penske right now.
Yeah, so I think this year what we've seen in every race, or especially in qualifying, is that you're kind of only getting one lap on your tires to nail it. And I think they just haven't been nailing that lap. Maybe they're hitting traffic, or maybe they don't have the setup right when they need it, which has just kind of been interesting because the qualifying format, you would throw on those reds before, and you would get maybe 2 or 3 attempts at hot laps to see if you could nail your lap. And this year you kind of just have that one lap, and maybe that's what it's coming down to. They did finish. Power was 5th and McLaughlin was 6th, which is where he started. Power had a good surge again, like he did in the last race. So Power has shown really good pace. Race-wise, the last couple races, his qualifying has been rough. And then Newgarden had the seatbelt issue, and he had made a couple good moves. So I think they are struggling on both ends, but their race pace does still look to be there, while the qualifying is kind of giving that concern.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see right now. I do not know what to take of Penske. I want to believe they're going to get it. I mean, wait until they get to ovals too, right? We haven't even seen them on ovals, but it is kind of concerning to see the consistency through each driver, right? Like Joseph Newgarden's been kind of struggling altogether, I guess. And then Will Power too, but Scotty looked fine. He looked like he might do something this race, and then it just didn't work out for them. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. As far as like odds and how they're reflecting it, it's very curious to see what the books do, because there is going to be a point in time where you have to just say the odds are there. You probably got to take them, but we'll see, right, on that one. How about I don't want to spend too much time on Chip Ganassi. We know they've steady Eddie, they're doing well. They seem to figure it out every time. But what about Meyer Shank? Meyer Shank has really changed things this year. They're very competitive.
Yeah, I think Felix has been in the Fast Six all 3 races, I believe. Armstrong, maybe 1 out of 3, maybe 2 out of 3. He's been like 7th in those other 2 races, so 7th or 8th. So I mean, they are up there every race, and then Felix is showing a little bit of a new life in the race of being able to stay up there. He was pretty pissed off with DeFrancesco after Long Beach. I think that's kind of what he blames of losing that podium spot, is getting hung up by a back marker. But he actually moved forward. Well, he ended up in fourth, but he had moved forward in the race. I don't think he was ever in contention for the win, but when Felix is getting podiums and staying up there, that's pretty impressive. Um, their qualifying's been great. Like I said, I don't know what happened with Armstrong this race, which
He ended
I,
up
I never
15th,
saw.
14th, 14th.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a strategy call or what happened. They didn't really mention it. I'd have to go back and look. That's a little bit of a bummer because Armstrong on street courses should be more of his bread and butter, based statistic wise. So he should be putting up better results now than when we get later in the ovals.
Well,
But yeah, they've looked good.
Kevin Simmons, he ended up being the Marcus Armstrong this last race. He ended up in the top 10, so it was very impressive drive from him.
Yeah, he kind of fought. Dixon went on the primary tires when about 85% of the cars started on those alternates after what happened in St. Pete. And Simpson just kind of followed Dixon. They would come in at the same time, and he was just kind of mirroring him, and that works. If you can follow what Scott Dixon's doing, it's probably gonna be a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, McLaren, we talked about that. They might struggle here, and they did. However, Lundgaard was the outlier out of that. I know he pained you a little bit, but ended up in top 3. Like, what's the situation with McLaren right now?
Yeah, he came from 12th, and he was the first driver that started on those primaries on that alternate strategy of the race, and it nearly worked out for him. And that was another really impressive drive for him. That's 3 this year, 3 out of 3, and he's looked like the best McLaren car, even above Pato, which we're not quite at Pato's better tracks yet. But if Pato is going to be that number one driver on a big team, you kind of want to see him performing, 95% of the weekends up there. But for Lundgaard to be able to put up these results in a car that Rosenquist and Rossi and Askew and the Siegel and Teo Porcher, like all these guys have tried to fill in that second McLaren car and have really struggled. For him to show all that pace and qualifying in the race has been really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, when did we start having the conversation about him being the first driver outside
Yeah,
of Pato? Not hate to say it because I love Pato, but
for sure.
Lundgaard is really, really sticking in there. Now I can't believe I'm going to say this, but how in the hell did Stingray Robb end up in the top 10 in that Junicos?
Yeah, him and Ferrucci, they were I think the other two cars besides the people we mentioned on those primary tires. And it just kind of worked. That strategy worked pretty well, even though it wasn't the winning strategy. And yeah, Stingray was a little cocky up there too. He was leading at one point, and he's waving at Connor Daly as he goes by and stuff. And I was like, "Calm down, Stingray." Like, but I mean, good drive for him. I don't think you'll see that. I'm not gonna start putting money on Stingray to be up there or anything. But yeah, that was the best drive of his career so far.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting because I will admit, like, this is probably the first season in a lot of seasons of doing this where I'm like, I'm actually kind of struggling to, well, for one reason, we're not getting enough from the books. So let's just throw that out there. But even then, if I did, like, I could imagine getting caught with these head to heads and that I take them and then we're something with strategy, something happens. And it seems kind of challenging to understand strategy right now. And how much is that is the hybrid impacting tires, or is it just the tires itself? Or is it a combination of both?
I do think it's going to be challenging, more challenging than past years, because this was a no caution race and everything was pretty clean.
That too.
So you would, especially on a street circuit too, you would expect everything to stay pretty standard. Which at the very front it kind of did, but when you have people like Ericsson and Armstrong who start up there and then they kind of fall back, and then people like Stingray are moving up, that really is kind of confusing and hard to handicap for sure. And in each race, I think the strategy is going to be a little different, and teams are going to be kind of chasing what worked in the last race. because in St. Pete, that alternate tire, not enough people started on those, and you had the early caution, and that really killed a lot of people's races. But um, the starting on the primary was actually a pretty good move in Long Beach, it turned out. Even though those cars weren't able to get off their alternates, and no one was really able to get off them without taking that penalty of doing a green pit stop. So yeah, I mean, I think the winners and the people up front will probably stay. You can stay a little comfortable, but matchups, yeah, you're probably going to lose some matchups or maybe some grid rival plays this year where someone just, they're racing fine, but they kind of just get caught up in a weird timing of their strategy and stuff. And that is something to keep in mind of like what teams seem to be strong on the strategy side. Maybe we need to look into who's killing the pit stops this year, things like that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Gridrival, let's talk about that very quickly. Solid pick that you had was the Felix. Well, actually, we had a couple. I know we just kept putting them, well, let's see. You had a two matchup one, which was Power over Pato, which was like a 1.5 gap. So he had to beat Pato by 2 spots, which he did. And you paired that with the Felix having the 2.5 gap to Lundgaard, which means he needed to just at least end within 2 spots of Lundgaard, which happened. That was a perfect hit. Beautiful one right there. And then, was it the Pato over 5? So he would finish beyond the 5th spot. And then the Dixon 4.5 to, I had Dixon written twice, so I can't actually remember who the pairing was. Was it Dixon 4.5 to, or was it someone else 4.5 to Dixon? I actually had that wrong on my sheet.
Yeah, I think I gave that one out. I didn't play that one, but I think it was Dixon 4.5 to McLaughlin,
That's
which
what it
worked
was.
out pretty well.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
Powell in the
played it.
worst.
That was
Yeah,
the one I played.
I just ended up not playing that one. I already had 6 plays in for the weekend, and a lot of it was fading McLaren, which I just kept going back to.
Yep.
And so I hit 5 out of 6. The one I lost was the one I was most confident in, and Dixon finishing better than 7, and Armstrong finishing 2.5 ahead of Ferrucci, which I really love that play. But still, otherwise, a really good weekend on those. A lot of my cards, I kind of just kept going back to fading Rossi, fading Pato. Luckily, I stayed away from Lingard a little bit because I do believe in him a little more than, which I know Rossi's not even on McLaren, but I did go back to the fading Rossi like we talked on the podcast. So, yeah, good weekend from Gridrival. I hope they continue with the qualifying plays. I think, I mean, it's early, but I feel good that could be like a bread and butter thing for me if they continue to put those out.
I'll tell you what, yeah, like if they continue to improve, if they do qualifying, that becomes my angle to play on what to play. Since books are not doing anything, that's what we will play. And you never know, maybe they will put out practice plays because they do that with F1 now, and we absolutely love it. It's like it's great. Like it's just another thing for us to have. So I'm hoping that we could see some practice plays, but we'll see. Let's at least accept what we got.
Yeah.
But I did, yeah. The pod collaboration card hit, which was the Rossi over 10.5 with the Felix under 10.5. So we'll have to cook up another one for everyone the next time around as well. We'll do it. We'll call it the podcast, the Push to Cash official Gridrival play or something. That was fun.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that worked out. Some sorry, my dog.
It's fine.
To cut.
He's happy about it, is what he's saying.
He's hearing the winds, but
we had to cut off just very briefly while we had an interruption from his dog. So I will just talk about what we expect. I guess for the next race, maybe. Oh, nope, he's back.
Sorry about that.
No.
Yeah. So I was just going to go through some of my other bets from the
Oh
weekend.
yeah, yep.
Um, I took the what I called the Palladium, the Alex Palou
Yeah, oh yeah,
podium.
that's right. That's
I
right.
paired that with a George Russell podium in the morning, so had a double sweat on that one that worked out. Um, I ended up I took Kirkwood after I had Herda pre-qualifying, which looked really good, but I was concerned with Kirkwood qualifying ahead of him because the Toronto I mentioned Toronto race last year. Herda qualified first, Kirkwood second, and and then I feel like Kirkwood kind of like stayed behind him and helped him, which Herta didn't end up doing. He was, I think, the first one into the pits, maybe after Newgarden. He tried to play an alternate strategy that didn't work out, I think, because of the overcut was more effective.
Yeah.
I hit a couple matchups. I took Armstrong and Lundgaard over Rossi. But then I had a Rosenquist podium at plus 600 that I was pretty much counting my money there in the last couple minutes of the race.
Can't do that.
I
Can't
know.
do that.
I was just grinning. It was about to be a big day, probably a 5 or 6 unit race for me because I also had Rosenquist in a group, and Lundgaard just happened to be in that group. So that
Oh
pass
no.
for the podium killed two plays in one stone there, and was a 3 unit loss just in the blink of an eye. But still, I still ended up a little over 2 units up, maybe 2.5 units. Mostly thankful to Gridrival in those plays. But yeah, I finally, I'd still be happy about it. My first couple weeks, I didn't lose money, which I'm always happy with. But I was just kind of getting some change at the end of the day. So to get something a little bigger was nice.
Well, that's good. Yeah, at least you had something to play. I felt like I had nothing, and I mean, I did throw. This is more of like I just wanted something. I said, let me just throw it on Pillow, and of course, the one time I'm like, all right, he may get this. Although it's obviously, I kind of in the back of my mind knew that wasn't going to hit, but I feel like there's some resemblance to what is happening with IndyCar with what we're seeing with like F1 and types of tracks like this, right? Where just it's harder to pass than ever before. Like we used to watch these races when 1 and 2 they could be going back and forth. They could be like just constantly trading, off laps, right? Saving their push to pass just to be able to strategically get ahead at a certain point. And I'm just
Yeah.
not seeing that this year. And I don't think we will see it this year, to be honest. I think it's going to be more of this. If you see a driver that is clearly in the top 3 in like qualifying practice, like Kirkwood seemed to be just doing fine. That if they get P1 at a track like where it's harder to pass, then yes, you might just want to chalk because we haven't seen safety cars too. What do we have? Like one in the past 3 races?
Yeah, it was on the first lap of the first race, and I haven't
We
had
haven't
one.
had one, right? And that's we're seeing some common similarities to F1. I mean, yes, there was a safety car in the last race, but probably shouldn't have been. So I'm that's where my mind is going as I'm like approaching the next race and the race before. What type of track are we at? I think we're in IMS, the next one. So that definitely has passing opportunities. But like, I'm still going to be very cautious about that because of what we're seeing so far. It just doesn't seem like we're seeing the same amount of kind of aggressiveness to pass. It's all about strategy. If you get the strategy right and you do everything right, that's your best opportunity to pass versus just driver doing it.
Yeah, and that's why I think that moment with Pillow at Thermal was really special because um, I think when we see the someone taking the lead for the race, I think it's going to be more on the pit exchanges and someone nailing their pit in, pit out lap, quick stop, someone coming out and taking the lead that way on the overcut or undercut. So yeah, those probably will be on the road and street courses some of the more exciting parts of the races. But and actually next is Barber,
Oh, is it
which
Barber? Oh, yeah.
which has become a really cool race as far as it's one of the few where it's kind of mixed where half the drivers are going to be doing a 2-stop and half do a 3-stop. and it's it's just like these other races where the strategy is going to be the big thing of which one's going to win. But Barber has always kind of been like that, where the last 2 years McLaughlin has won on the three stop, where he's chosen to go fast, take the more stops, and just go as fast as he can the whole race. And then the two stop I won the 2 years prior to that, where Pillow and Award pulled it off. And so it is doable. There's some races where people try to do these things, like St. Pete. People used to try to do a different pit stop number, and then they would end up like ninth or 10th.
Mm-hmm.
But this race has a really good mix. It's going to be, if it plays out like that again, it's probably going to be the same thing where you're following one strategy and another strategy, and it's going to blend in the last 15, 20 laps for a pretty exciting race, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I forgot. So is that in a couple weeks? I guess I just completely lost my track on the calendar here.
Yeah, it's the first weekend in May, so we got a couple weeks, which is it's sharing. I guess
Oh,
Indy is sharing May with another race, but
mm-hmm.
I tweeted this out earlier. I found it kind of interesting. The next three races, all three of the previous winners have a chance at three-peating at that track. So McLaughlin's won the last two times at Barber. Palou has won the last two in the spring race at the Indy Road Course. And obviously Newgarden's won the last two 500s. And so I kind of looked into when's the last time someone won three in a row? How often do people really win two in a row? Because it's kind of interesting that for the next three races we've got a double, like a repeat champion here of that track.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went all the way back to 2010 real quick. I found that there were 34 different tracks that IndyCar raced at, and in that span there was 24 instances of a back-to-back winner. And only two of those 24 have managed to win three in a row, because I was thinking maybe it's Scott Dixon at Mid-Ohio or Will Power at the Indy Road Course, Newgarden at Iowa. But it turned out to be Newgarden at Gateway 2020 to 2022 and Will Power in the Sao Paulo street race 2010 to 2012. And so on one hand, that's just kind of an interesting little like nugget that I was wondering myself and looked up, but also I like to consider those things when I'm handicapping a race, because partially when you're looking to who can I eliminate, or sometimes just as simple as who won the last race or who won last year might be a thing of, well, how often does someone really win again, two in a row? But this kind of gives some statistics of, if they're really good here, maybe you take them again, or are these people going to win three in a row? I mean, we'll have to see.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was a big reason why I was like, maybe that was a bad move, because it's like, how often do we see three winners in a row for a race? And I was like, but it is Pillow. Maybe this is a different year. We're seeing different things. And then I was in a rush just to get out. So,
I probably would have played Pillow last week also, but I had two Gridrival plays that I took Pillow worse than 2.0,
yeah.
which I really like that number actually, because he basically has to win. And if you play it in a card with three plays, if that pushes like it did this week, then it just goes to your two plays, and that play comes off the board. But I mean, maybe not on a track where like Thermal or some of these other like Indy GP. That's a little scary to pick Pillow for that, but almost every other race, if I can see Pillow at 2.0 and Gridrival, I think I'm going to take the worst and just roll with it.
And I think that's a strategy that we look at too, is like the cap when it comes to those teams. On the flip side too, right? Like for F1, when we start seeing anyone for the race at like 18 and a half out of 20 cars, considering the track, like a track like this week where there's going to be a high probability of DNFs. Like if I start seeing 18 and a halves, I'm going to be taking some of the bottom feeders like a Sauber team, because they might just clear just based off DNFs. It's not about them performing, right? It's they just price them so low. And then on the flip side, like you're saying, 2.0 is very high. Like you can't really go any higher. You can go to 1.5, sure. but you can't go any higher than that. The only way you can look is going worse because of any situation. So yeah, good stuff, man. I'm looking forward to it. I thought for some reason Barber wasn't going to be until later after Indy. For some reason, my mind had that in my head. So going to be a busy May because then you have Barber, IMS, and then the Indy 500. So they're going to get right to it, and then I think the real calendar really kicks off for it. So um, let's talk very quickly just about Barber and the teams. So obviously we know Scotty is really good here, Penske in general, but we just talked about how Penske is struggling. What do we think is that gonna do you think they actually find something at this track? Is there something about this track that just this team is good at?
So yeah, if Penske struggles here, then I think that really raises some red flags because this is a Penske track. Like I said, McLaughlin's won the last two. I think Newgarden has a couple wins here. Power was, I want to say, second last year behind McLaughlin. So I'm going to be looking for some good numbers on Penske drivers in this race. I'm sure McLaughlin's number will be a little lower when the books see that he's won the last two, but this might be a really good position to take Power. Especially he was in a test earlier this year. Not all the teams were, but maybe 15 to 20 cars were there, and Power led both sessions on that. So if they can just kind of roll with whatever setup they had there, um, I'm gonna try Penske again. I think here, Barber, but if they struggle here, if they struggle at the 500, then they might be in for a really long year.
I'll tell you what, I am going to be taking more shots if I can find it on Felix in these races. I will be looking at Armstrong as well. I think you got to start taking them seriously. I mean, they seem to have something going for them. It didn't matter what track they've been at; they've seemed pretty competitive. So, Ganassi light, I guess you could say they're kind of turning into. So, very interested to see how they turn out. So.
In Long Beach, McLaren was kind of my fade team. I think Andretti might be my fade team here. They've always struggled here. They haven't been terrible. I don't think they've been as bad as maybe McLaren's been at Long Beach, but they didn't. They opted for a test at Thermal instead of testing at Barber, so they don't have that setup this year that other teams have gotten ahead, probably on the hybrid setup, figuring that out. So adding those two things together, if there's a good spot to fade Andretti, I'm going to look for it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for me to want to back Penske unless the numbers are really juicy for like Gridrival. But that is definitely one of those, like the Ericsson, the Kirkwoods, if they're at that like 8.5, anywhere between 5 and that 8.5 number, I'm going to be taking the worst on those and then looking for opportunities with, maybe I will take a chance on like willpower, I guess. We'll see what the matchups give us, but that is definitely something I'm going to be eyeing. So, well, this is great stuff, man. As always, love debriefing on IndyCar. This has been a challenging year, so like trying to get that information from the lens from you, since you're really tuned into it as more than I am right now, just because F1 season's really hot and heavy. So we are going to finish our triple header here, so I'll get a little break and I can put a little attention to IndyCar. So
there we go.
As always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you. I guess it's in a couple weeks. We'll do our betting show, or push to cash betting preview show. So
sounds good. I'll be ready for it. See you in a couple weeks.
All right, man. We'll see ya.